I'm not celebrating Valentine's Day 2026 because exactly 1 year ago, on February 13th, I buried my husband Marcus. The twist, he's still alive. He's living 2 towns over, with a woman who has no idea I exist. And tomorrow she's going to find out everything. My name is Natalie, I'm 34 years old. And for the past 365 days, I've been legally dead to the man I married, while he's been very much alive, building a completely new life, with a completely new identity. But let me start from the beginning, because nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I discovered on February 13th, 2025. It was supposed to be the most romantic week of our lives. Marcus had surprised me with a trip to this beautiful cabin in Vermont. Told me he wanted to celebrate Valentine's Day early, just the two of us, no distractions, pure romance. We'd been married for 6 years, and honestly, things had been rough. He'd been distant, working late. His phone was always face down, you know the signs, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. This trip felt like proof that I was wrong. That he still loved me, that we were going to be okay. We arrived on February 12th. The cabin was perfect, snow everywhere, fireplace crackling, wine chilling, everything you'd see in a romantic movie. That first night was magical. We talked for hours, laughed like we used to, made love like newlyweds, and I remember thinking, this is it. We're back, we're gonna make it. I fell asleep in his arms, feeling more secure than I had in months. I woke up at 3 in the morning to an empty bed. The sheets next to me were cold, like he'd been gone for a while. I called out for Marcus, no answer. I walked through the cabin, nothing. His coat was gone, his boots were gone, but his suitcase was still there. I looked out the window and our rental car was missing. Now here's where my brain started doing that thing where you make excuses, right? Maybe he couldn't sleep, maybe he went for a drive. Maybe he wanted to surprise me with breakfast from town. But something felt wrong, deeply wrong, in a way I couldn't explain. I tried calling his phone, straight to voicemail. I tried texting, nothing. Hours passed, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and the panic was building in my chest like a physical weight. At 7:30 in the morning, there was a knock on the cabin door. 2 police officers stood on the porch, and the moment I saw their faces, I knew. I knew something terrible had happened. They asked if I was Natalie Chen, asked if I was staying at the cabin with my husband Marcus Chen, and when I said yes, the older officer took off his hat and said the words that would change everything. There had been an accident. A car matching our rental's description had gone off Route 22, down an embankment. The vehicle had caught fire, and the driver, they believed it was Marcus, didn't survive. They needed me to come to the hospital to identify, to confirm. I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember the drive. I remember being completely numb, like my brain had shut down to protect itself. At the hospital, they led me to the morgue. The body was burned, severely burned, almost unrecognizable. But there were identifying factors. The height was right. The build was right. He was wearing Marcus's watch, the custom Rolex I'd given him for our 5th anniversary, engraved with our initials. His wallet was in the car, mostly destroyed, but his driver's license was there, half melted but visible. They asked me if this was my husband, and I looked at this burned body wearing his watch, and I said yes. I confirmed it was Marcus Chen. What happened next was a blur. I called his parents, I called my parents. Everyone flew in, we planned a funeral, I picked out a casket, I wrote a eulogy. I stood in front of 200 people on February 13th and talked about the man I loved, the man I'd lost, the man I buried that day. I was a widow at 33 years old. Everyone was so kind, so sympathetic. His mother held me while I cried. His father said I was the best thing that ever happened to his son. And I believed I was mourning the love of my life. The life insurance company was quick, surprisingly quick. Marcus had a policy for $1.5 million. I was the sole beneficiary, and within 3 weeks, the money was in my account. People told me not to make any big decisions, to take time to grieve, but I couldn't stay in our house. Every room reminded me of him. I sold it, moved to a small apartment in the city, started seeing a therapist twice a week, joined a widow's support group, and tried to figure out how to build a life without Marcus. For months, I was just existing, not living, existing. I'd wake up and forget he was gone, reach for him in bed, start to call him about something funny I saw, then remember. The grief was crushing, physical, like carrying a boulder on my chest every single day. But slowly, very slowly, I started to heal, started to think maybe I could survive this. Maybe eventually I'd even be okay. Then came October 15th, 2025. I was at a coffee shop downtown, meeting a friend from my support group when I saw him. Across the street. Walking out of an office building, laughing on his phone, very much alive, very much not dead, was Marcus. My Marcus, my dead husband, the man I'd buried 7 months earlier. I thought I was losing my mind, genuinely thought I was having a breakdown. I ran outside, nearly got hit by a car, screamed his name, Marcus, Marcus. But he didn't turn around. Didn't react, just kept walking, got into a silver BMW I'd never seen before and drove away. My friend found me on the sidewalk hyperventilating, and I tried to explain what I'd seen, but the words weren't making sense even to me. I didn't sleep that night, couldn't sleep. My brain was spinning with impossible explanations. Maybe I'd misidentified the body, maybe the police had made a mistake, maybe Marcus had amnesia and didn't remember who he was. Maybe. The next morning, I went back to that office building, waited outside for hours, and at 5:30 p.m., I saw him again. Same face, same walk, same everything, but his hair was different, styled differently, and he was wearing clothes I'd never seen, expensive clothes, designer clothes. I followed him. I know how that sounds, but I followed him. He drove to a beautiful house in the suburbs, a house I'd never seen, and when he pulled into the driveway, a woman came out to greet him. A stunning blonde woman in her late 20s, and she kissed him, not a friendly kiss, a wife kiss, and then a little girl, maybe 4 years old, ran out and he scooped her up, spun her around, and they all went inside like a perfect little family. I sat in my car outside that house for 3 hours, shaking, crying, trying to understand what I was seeing. Was this his secret family? Had he been living a double life? But that didn't make sense with the accident, with the body, with the funeral. Nothing made sense. Finally, I drove home, and I did what any person in my situation would do. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Deanna Reeves, she was ex-FBI, and when I told her my story, showed her photos of Marcus, gave her the address of that house, she didn't look at me like I was crazy, she looked at me like I was right. She said she'd seen cases like this before. Not many, but enough to know that something was very wrong. She told me to stay away from the house, let her do her job. And within 2 weeks, she came back with information that shattered my entire reality. The man living in that house wasn't Marcus Chen. Legally, his name was Ryan Matthews. He had a driver's license under that name, a social security number under that name, a whole identity under that name that went back 8 years, which meant Marcus had been planning this long before he ever married me. Ryan Matthews owned a consulting business, had a wife named Jessica, they'd been married for 5 years, and they had a daughter named Emma who was 4 years old. But here's where it gets worse. Diana dug deeper, and she found that Marcus Chen, my Marcus Chen, had taken out that $1.5 million life insurance policy 8 months before the Vermont trip, and the beneficiary was me. But there was something else. A separate offshore account, a hidden account, that had received a deposit of $1.5 million 3 days after I'd received my insurance payout. Someone had paid Marcus to die. Diana's theory was this: Marcus had been living as Ryan Matthews for years, possibly his entire adult life. He'd married me as Marcus Chen to create a legal identity he could kill off. He'd taken out the life insurance policy. He'd staged his own death, used a body, probably a homeless person or someone from the black market, dressed it in his clothes, his watch, his wallet, burned it beyond recognition, and then disappeared back into his real life as Ryan Matthews while I collected the insurance money that he then funneled back to himself. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to die. This man, the man I'd loved, the man I'd married, the man I'd mourned, had used me, had manipulated me, had turned me into a pawn in an insurance fraud scheme, and somewhere out there someone had died, a real person had died, so Marcus could fake his death and steal $1.5 million. Diana said I had 2 choices: go to the police and report everything, which might work but might also make me look complicit since I'd received the insurance money, or, and this is what she recommended, I could play the long game. I could investigate further, gather concrete evidence, find out who else was involved, and take him down in a way that guaranteed he'd face real consequences. I chose the long game because I wanted more than justice. I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy every piece of the life he'd built on my grief. Over the next 3 months, Diana and I became a team. We tracked Marcus's movements, his Ryan Matthews movements. We documented everything. We found that Jessica, his wife, had no idea about Marcus Chen. She genuinely believed she was married to Ryan Matthews, a successful consultant who traveled frequently for work. We found that the offshore account had multiple deposits over the years, meaning Marcus, or Ryan, or whoever he really was, had done this before, possibly multiple times. We discovered that 8 years ago there was another insurance payout, this one in California, to a woman named Lindsay Foster whose husband, David Foster, had died in a boating accident. His body was never recovered, and the payout was $2 million. Lindsay Foster had moved to Europe shortly after and was never heard from again. Diana tried to track her down, but it was like she'd vanished, and my blood ran cold thinking about what that might mean. We found a connection between Marcus and a man named Viktor Petrov, a known criminal who specialized in fake documents, false identities, and here's the terrifying part: body procurement. Diana had contacts in law enforcement, and through them, we learned that Viktor was under investigation for multiple crimes. But he was slippery, always one step ahead, and without concrete evidence, they couldn't touch him. This was bigger than insurance fraud. This was a criminal operation, and Marcus was right in the middle of it. The question was, how deep did it go? How many other women had he done this to? How many other fake deaths? How many real bodies? I wanted to go to the police immediately, but Diana convinced me to wait. She said if we went now, Marcus would lawyer up, Viktor would disappear, and we'd never get the full truth. She said we needed to catch them in the act. We needed to record conversations, we needed irrefutable proof. So we kept digging. In December, Diana planted a bug in Marcus's car, in Ryan's car, whatever you want to call it, and we started listening. Most of it was boring business calls, conversations with Jessica about groceries and Emma's press school. But then on December 18th, we hit gold. Marcus got a call from Viktor and they talked openly, freely about the next job, another widow, another payout, another body, scheduled for March. I listened to that recording 50 times, hearing Marcus laugh about how easy it was, how these lonely, desperate women just wanted to believe in love, how insurance companies never looked too closely at grieving widows, how the bodies were cheap. Viktor knew people, people who wouldn't be missed, and for a cut of the payout, where Viktor provided everything. I listened to my dead husband talk about me like I was a joke, a mark, a means to an end, and something inside me broke, then rebuilt itself, harder, colder, focused. Diana said we had enough, we could go to the police, but I said no, not yet. I wanted Marcus to know it was me. I wanted him to see my face when his world collapsed. I wanted him to feel the same terror and betrayal I'd felt. So we came up with a plan, a beautiful, terrible plan. Valentine's Day 2026 was on a Friday. Marcus, as Ryan, had plans with Jessica, a fancy dinner reservation, a hotel suite downtown, the whole romantic package. Diana found out through the bug that Jessica's mother was taking Emma for the night, so it would just be the two of them, alone. On February 13th, the anniversary of the day I buried him, I sent Marcus an envelope, delivered to his office, no return address. Inside was a single photo, a photo from our wedding day, me in my white dress, him in his tux, smiling at the camera, and on the back, I'd written in red ink, "Happy anniversary, Marcus, see you tomorrow." Diana watched him open it through a camera she'd planted. She said his face went white, completely white, his hands started shaking, and he immediately called Viktor. Told him they had a problem, told him someone knew, told him they needed to meet. They met that night at a warehouse Viktor owned, and Diana and I were there, hidden, recording everything. I watched through a crack in the wall as Marcus paced, panicked, saying someone from his past had found him, saying they needed to disappear, maybe leave the country. Viktor was calm, too calm, and he said he could make the problem go away, permanently, for the right price. Marcus asked what he meant, and Viktor smiled, said the same way they'd made other problems go away, one more body, one more accident, whoever sent that photo would disappear, and no one would ever know. Marcus hesitated. I saw him hesitate, and for a second, I thought maybe there was a shred of humanity left in him, but then he nodded, said do it, said he'd pay whatever it cost. That was it, that was the confession we needed, conspiracy to commit murder, on tape, clear as day. Diana called her contact at the FBI and within an hour, federal agents surrounded the warehouse. They arrested both Marcus and Viktor. They seized all the records, all the fake documents, all the evidence of their operation. I stayed hidden, watched it all happen, watched Marcus get handcuffed, watched him look around in confusion, watched the moment he realized he'd been set up. As they were loading him into the FBI van, I stepped out of the shadows, walked right up to him, and said, "Happy Valentine's Day, Marcus." The look on his face, that look, was worth every second of the past year, the grief, the pain, the betrayal, all of it. He opened his mouth to say something, but I just smiled, turned around, and walked away. I never looked back. The investigation that followed was massive. Marcus and Viktor were charged with insurance fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and After they found evidence linking them to 3 other suspicious deaths, including Lindsay Foster's husband, they were also charged with homicide. The body I'd identified as Marcus was eventually identified through DNA as a homeless man named Thomas Grant who'd gone missing in February 2025. His family had been looking for him, and now at least they had answers. Jessica was devastated, completely destroyed. She'd had no idea, none at all. And suddenly she was a single mother whose husband was actually a serial con artist and possible murderer. I felt terrible for her, for Emma. They were innocent victims in all of this, just like I'd been. I reached out to her through Diana, offered to help in any way I could, and surprisingly, she agreed to meet. We met at a park, watched Emma play on the swings, and we talked for hours. She told me about her life with Ryan, how he'd been a good husband, a good father, how he'd traveled a lot for work but always came home, always made time for them, how she'd never suspected anything. I told her about Marcus, about our marriage, about the accident, about everything, and by the end of the conversation, we were both crying, 2 women who'd loved the same man, a man who'd never really existed. Over the following months, the trial became national news. The story was everywhere. The man who'd faked his death multiple times, the criminal enterprise, the victims, all of it. Marcus tried to cut a deal, tried to blame everything on Victor. But the recordings, the evidence, it was all too damning. In November 2026, he was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Victor got life. The insurance companies sued me for the payout, claiming I'd been complicit. But Diana had made sure we had evidence proving I'd been a victim too, that I genuinely believed Marcus was dead, that I'd cooperated fully with the investigation. The case was dismissed, and I got to keep the money, blood money, dirty money, money that would never feel clean. I donated half of it, $750,000, to organizations that helped victims of fraud and domestic abuse. The other half, I used to start a new life, a real life, somewhere far away from all of this. I changed my name, not to hide but to move on, to become someone new, someone who wasn't defined by what Marcus had done to me. Jessica and I stay in touch, we text sometimes, send photos. We've become unlikely friends, bonded by shared trauma and the strange reality that we both loved a ghost. She's doing better now, Emma's thriving. And they've both started therapy, working through everything. As for me, I'm okay, genuinely okay. Some days are harder than others. Some days I still wake up angry, but mostly, I wake up grateful. Grateful that I survived, grateful that I found the truth, grateful that I got justice, not just for me, but for Thomas Grant, for Lindsay Foster, for everyone Marcus and Victor hurt. So no, I'm not celebrating Valentine's Day 2026. I'm not celebrating the anniversary of the day I buried a man who was never really my husband. I'm not celebrating the day I became a widow to a living man. But I am celebrating something else. I'm celebrating the day I stopped being a victim and became a survivor. I'm celebrating the strength it took to uncover the truth. I'm celebrating the fact that Marcus Chen, or Ryan Matthews, or whoever he really was, is spending the rest of his life in prison where he belongs. And tomorrow, on Valentine's Day 2026, I'm going to wake up in my new apartment, in my new city, under my new name. And I'm going to do something I haven't done in a long time. I'm going to take myself out to dinner, order the most expensive wine on the menu, and toast to the woman I've become. The woman who refused to let betrayal destroy her. The woman who fought back and won. Because here's what I learned from all of this. Love can be a lie. Marriage can be a scam. People can be monsters, but you are stronger than you think. You are braver than you know. And when someone tries to bury you, metaphorically or literally, you have 2 choices: stay buried, or dig yourself out and make sure they're the ones who end up 6 feet under. I chose to dig, and if you're listening to this, if you're going through something similar, if someone has betrayed you, used you, hurt you, I need you to hear this. You can survive this, you can get through this. And on the other side, there's a life waiting for you, a better life, a life where you're not someone's victim, you're your own hero. That's why I'm sharing my story. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but because somewhere out there might be another woman, another victim, who needs to know that it's possible to come back from this. It's possible to take back your power. It's possible to bury the past and build a future. So here's to all the women who've been lied to, cheated on, betrayed, manipulated. Here's to all the women who've been told they're crazy when they knew something was wrong. Here's to all the women who've been underestimated, dismissed, and disregarded. You are not alone, you are not weak, and you are absolutely capable of destroying anyone who tries to destroy you. I buried my husband on February 13, 2025. He's still alive, he's in prison, and I've never been more free. That's my Valentine's story, that's my truth. And that's why I'll never celebrate Valentine's Day the same way again. Because I've learned that the greatest love story isn't about finding someone else. It's about finding yourself, protecting yourself, and never, ever letting anyone take your power away. Thank you for listening, thank you for being here. And if my story helped you in any way, if it gave you hope, if it gave you strength, then everything I went through was worth it. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember, you are the hero of your own story, so write an ending that makes you proud. This is Natalie, signing off, and wishing you all a Valentine's Day filled with real love, real truth, and real freedom, the kind of freedom that comes from knowing exactly who you are, and never settling for anything less than you deserve. Before you go, I need to tell you something. The story you just heard, it's not the only one like this. I have 3 more cases of women who discovered their dead husbands were actually alive, and one of them is even more twisted than Natalie's. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it when I drop that story next week. Comment below what shocked you most about Natalie's story. And if you made it this far, you're part of the family now. Welcome. I'll see you in the next video.